Hello, and welcome to the Yes You Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Anna Manning, and you're listening to episode number 46 What to Do When You Get Nervous. So, I've been meaning to record this episode for a little while because we all get nervous. And probably none of us want to get nervous, but we all do. Even those of us that feel pretty confident most of the time. And I'd count myself in that category. I get nervous, and people get surprised when they hear that I get nervous, which always in turn surprises me. And we go on a little surprise loop of people. And the reason that I recorded this podcast episode now is because last week I went to a tender meeting. So, a business that I'm working with, I'm doing some contracting, coaching, and training for their staff. They were pitching for a new contract, a big new contract. And we had to go and present to, I think there was like 6 people in this room in the city of London. And as you might imagine, that is a situation where I would and did get nervous. And the people that I was with expressed surprise that I get nervous. And I do. So I thought, oh, do you know what? This is probably an episode for people to hear. One, because I don't want I don't want you to think that if you're getting nervous, then that's unique to you. And I also want to share how I handle nerves and nervousness because it's always been part of my life. It might have always been part of yours. So, before I get on with the episode, I have a free masterclass happening in June, on the 29th of June, 2023. And it's the Grow Your Professional Confidence Masterclass. It booked out in May. We had 100 people in May. So I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to run it again in June. Why not? People need the help. And I want to share this work with as many people as possible. So there's a link in the show notes. You can go and find it on your phone or on your desktop, whatever you're listening on, and you can book a place there. If you've already been and you thought it was great and you want to refer people you know to it, colleagues, friends, whoever, then also feel very free to do that. And if you're listening to this episode in the future and it's past 29th of June 2023, don't worry because that link will also take you to my link tree, which will show you what's happening in the SU community right now. Maybe there'll be something else for you. All right, so on with the episode. I get nervous, always have done. And by this point, I accept that I probably always will do. And I know that nerves can make things difficult. But if you know how to handle yourself when you are nervous, you will be better off. And generally, it will be better for your confidence. Now, notice how I phrase that. I'm not talking in this episode about how to get rid of nerves. I'm talking about how to handle yourself when you are nervous. And because this is how I deal with it, right? My focus isn't on getting rid of the nerves. My focus is on how I handle myself when that nervousness happens. And I gave you that recent example at the beginning of that pitch meeting, that tender meeting that I was in. And I was nervous before that. And so I kind of made a mental note of all of the things that I now take for granted, the ways which I handle myself, which helps when I'm nervous. So I'm going to share that with you today. And I'm also going to share a couple of things that you might inadvertently be doing, which might also be hindering. So, nervousness, really common thing. And it's brought on by your body's stress response. So when you are in a particular situation or you're anticipating being in a particular situation where your brain perceives there to be some kind of risk, some kind of threat, some kind of possibility of danger, and this doesn't have to be physical danger, right? It could just be the threat of people hearing you or people judging you or you being perceived in a certain way or you having to perform. That can trigger your body's stress response. And with that stress response, there is a series of hormonal and physiological responses that help prepare you or prepare your body to deal with that threat. You know this as your body's fight or flight response. And your body produces, among other things, adrenaline and cortisol in order for you to actually deal with this threat, whatever's in front of you. Now, if you're dealing with a threat like there's somebody walking behind you on a dark street, maybe the way you deal with that is you get adrenaline and cortisol in that instance, and it helps you to run faster, which it does. And your heart beats faster, your blood pressure rises, your breathing quickens, and you increase your kind of alertness and energy. Now, that is a survival response that is built into humans. And thank God it is, because it allows us to run away from danger, to fight when we need to fight. It's a really useful response in some circumstances. However, in our modern world, our brain does not distinguish between a threat which is like a physical threat to our safety and a threat which is more of a a threat to our emotional life, or a threat to a perceived threat to our kind of security or our job or our status or something like that. So you might be going for a job interview and your body responds as if there is a tiger in the corner of your bedroom before you go. Seems mad, but actually it's a really useful physiological response. And it's good to know that, because I think when you know that, you can start to think about, instead of just like, how do I get rid of it? It's like, well, you probably don't, because it's a physiological response that you cannot actually control. It is not being controlled by your conscious brain, is it? You're not deciding, oh, I'm going to get nervous right now. It is a lightning speed reaction, which is being controlled by a different part of your brain than the you that I'm talking to is controlling. So it's going to do its thing. It's going to do its thing. And nerves are going to arise. How you handle yourself when you're feeling nervous, I think, is the most important thing to think about. And that is something that you are in control of. You are not, unless you, I don't know, have some kind of Yoda powers, in control of the physiological response that creates nervousness. Not really. There's ways you can impact it, and we'll talk about that. But generally, you're not in control of that. What you are in control of is how you handle yourself when you are nervous. Some of you might be too young to know who Simon Le Bon is. Duran Duran. Look it up if you don't know. Got a few banging tunes. But he said this quote that I love, and he said, it's not fear. And actually, he quotes another actor with an actor with telling him this. He said, it's not fear, it's adrenaline. It's just your mind and your body preparing you to do something extraordinary. And I love that, because I remember it when I'm about to do something and I'm nervous, because I know that if I'm about to do something that's making me nervous, I'm living life. I'm like there. I'm putting myself out of my comfort zone. I'm trying. I said yes to something. And what if I'm about to do something extraordinary? Maybe that's what the nerves are a sign of, which is pretty cool. So if you get nervous, remember, it's adrenaline, and it's your mind and body preparing you to do something extraordinary. So I like to think of what you can do to handle yourself well around nervousness and nerves. And I think of it before, during, and after. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to walk you through the practical stuff that I did before this tender meeting, during it, and after it, regarding nerves and nervousness, how I handled myself, because it's still really fresh in my mind. So before the meeting in the morning, I am in my home office, and I'm supposed to be doing some of my last minute prep work, going through my notes, just checking a few things. There was a few things I wanted to check on the company website and just weave them into what we were talking about. And I was preparing my bullet points and all the rest of it. But what I noticed I was doing was procrastinating. I noticed that I was kind of flipping around on other things. I was looking at social media. I was thinking about writing an email. And I was like, okay, I was supposed to be sitting down and doing this work on the last bit of, my bullet points and this pitch, and I'm not doing it. And I noticed that I was doing that. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And I thought, do you know what? I feel nerves. I'm nervous. And now I've noticed that I'm nervous, I have a little word with myself. So, and I literally do this. You might think this is crazy, but I can tell you that it really works. So I said, I look at myself in the mirror when I do this, but you really don't have to. What's happening, Anna? What's going on? And my response comes, well, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this bit of prep. I know I should be doing it, but I don't want to do it because I don't know how this is going to go, and I feel nervous, and I really don't want to mess it up, and I want to do a good job. Right? So I hear myself say that. And then I talk to myself. So first, notice what I did. I listen. I ask a question. I'm like, what's going on? What's happening, Anna? And I answer. And then I talk. And I work on my own, right? I don't have colleagues to kind of boost me up in these moments. Well, and at that point I was at home on my own. So I said, do you know what? I don't care what happens in this meeting. I don't care if you forget everything. I don't care if you fall flat on your face. I'm really proud of you that you're even doing it. I'm proud that you're going there. I'm proud that you've done the preparation you've done so far. And I believe in you. And at that point, I felt the nerves lift. Now, that's not designed to get the nerves to disappear, but it is designed to speak to the person who is experiencing those nerves. It's bad enough and pressurized enough to be putting yourself out of your comfort zone and going to do something which makes you nervous. And on top of that, you have to experience these awful feelings in your tummy, and some people will feel it in their head and their chest, and right. So I acknowledge that. I ask the person who is experiencing that, and I listen to what they have to say. And then I talk to them. There is a human in there who is experiencing those nerves. Yes, all right, in this example, it's me. But it's the same in you. There is a human in there who is experiencing those nerves. And that human is in need of something. A bit of support, a bit of encouragement, being listened to. And I can't tell you the good that it does. So what happened after I did that little pep talk was, and this was pretty instantaneous, I actually felt quite pumped about what I was doing. I was like, right, I'm going for it. I actually said that out loud after my little pep talk where I was like, I don't care what happens. I don't care if you fall flat on your face. And this was the other thing. I said, I promise you, I will not beat you up no matter what happens. I will be proud of you no matter what happens. That lifted a pressure and a weight off my chest. Now, imagine the same thing hearing that from someone else. Imagine you're nervous before something and you're going out to do something and your boss is like, what's happening? Yeah, okay. You're nervous. Okay, you're worried that it's going to go badly and it's going to be all of this and all of that. And imagine if they then say, and guess what? I'm proud of everything you've done to this point. And even if you fall flat on your face out there, I will support you. I will be with you all the way and I will never criticize you. Imagine the weight that would lift from your chest. That was just like the weight that lifted from mine. You may have somebody else to do that for you, but you may not. And even if you do, you can do it for yourself. And everyone is very skeptical about whether this would actually work to help them, talking to themselves rather than someone talking to them. And I can promise you that it does, because I've done it a million times and I have clients that have done it too. So that's one of the things that I do before. But of course, I'm not talking about the nerves going away. I'm talking about how to handle them most effectively, because I know they're going to be there. So I get my preparation done and I get my nice outfit on and I'm feeling fly and I'm going into town and I'm strolling through the city of London with my bag, clipping along with my loafers. It's a sunny day, all's good with the world. And I get to the swanky reception, this big building in the city of London, and I'm there early, as always. So I'm sitting in the reception on my own, waiting for the other two people that are arriving at the correct time, instead of me, who's arriving half an hour early, as always. And I notice that as I'm sitting in this chair and looking around this gorgeous reception, that I'm nervous. And this time, I see that there's some magazines next to me on the side, and I just pick one up and start flicking through it. Now, this happened to be Wired magazine, which I love, and there was loads of stories about space, which I'm quite into. So I got engrossed in some stories about space, and that was another way of handling myself when I'm nervous. It literally is distraction. At that point, I didn't want to be going over my notes, rehashing things in my head, right? I needed my head to be clearer and calmer. So I didn't want to be putting extra stuff into it. I literally distracted myself. I did something else. I also had a chat with the receptionist. That was really nice because she was really smiley and friendly. And that made me feel kind of smiley and friendly. And that put me at a little bit of ease. So distraction can be helpful in that moment. The other thing that can be really helpful is movement. So instead of getting the tube all the way, I was taking a train and then a tube, I just took the train and then I walked from the train to where I was going, because this is another one of the ways that I like to handle myself when I'm nervous. That adrenaline and cortisol, which is causing that nervous feeling, is intended to be used by your body for action, fight or flight, right? They're doing things. But I was able to do some brisk walking, and that probably dissipated some of it too. So to recap, before, on the day of the meeting, I listened to myself. I noticed that there was something going on, and then I talked to myself. Later on, when I was nervous again, I did a bit of distraction. And then again, I did a bit of movement. All good. So there's some of the things that you can do before that I find really helpful to kind of just look after yourself and handle yourself when you're feeling nervous. You might have other things too, which you might be thinking of as we go through this. The other thing that I just want to draw your attention to before is what a lot of people do, and definitely I used to do. And to be honest, my brain still tries to go there, but I don't allow it at all. I notice it and I shut it down really quickly, which you can do with practice, which is many times when we're about to go into a big situation like that, we will start catastrophizing or trash talking ourselves in our mind. Oh my God, it's all going to go wrong. I'm not very good at this kind of thing. They're not going to be interested. I'm going to forget everything, blah, 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 on and on and on like that. Now imagine what that does to your nerves. What that does to your brain is it registers the event as even more of a threat than it was perceiving it to be before. And you kind of internally raise the stakes every time you're doing that in your mind. So I'm not saying this is necessarily the easiest thing to do, but it is entirely possible. Be onto your brain that day when it's trying to do that, and just call a halt, because it will make things worse. And it's going to be challenging enough. You're already nervous. This is going to make it worse. So aim to notice and just be like, no, we're not going there. You don't have to be rude, but you might have to be a little bit firm, especially if you're used to kind of catastrophizing and trash talking yourself in your brain before you go into something. And again, imagine what would happen if you had a boss that was doing that, who was sitting there before you went into this, whatever it is you're going to do, saying, oh my God, no one's going to like you. They're all going to think you're boring. Oh, this is going to be really bad for your reputation. What's going to happen? Right? That would increase the pressure you felt inside and would create more nerves. So be aware. If you're doing this, you are making your nerves worse. That is not what we're trying to do. Notice if you're doing it and call a halt. So then what about during? So you're nervous. So I go into this tender meeting and I thought there would be like 3 of them. There were like 6. It may have even been 7. It felt like overkill, to be honest. But there we were. There was 3 of us on one side of the table and at least 6 of them on the other. And we had to present our various different bits. Now, I still felt nervous. I could feel that my hands were slightly sweaty. I'd poured out the water for us all, but I knew if I picked up that glass that my hand might be a little bit shaky. And that is a byproduct, again, of the adrenaline. So what do I do during when I'm nervous? I think I don't try and fight with the nerves or get rid of them. I'm just like, they're just there. It's fine. I just focus on handling myself. And the first thing that I do is I try and narrow my focus. So for me, I find that when I'm nervous, my brain wanders more. So I can tend to get more in my head and lose where I am. So I'm more kind of in my head than in the room. And a lot of people talk to me about this. So you can get in your head and you're kind of thinking about this and you're looking at this one guy in the corner that's like very serious and he barely looked up at you. And you're thinking, oh God, this guy doesn't like us already, right? See what happens? My brain already went there. And I was like, no, back to the room. Every time your brain tries to wander, no, back to the room. Narrow your focus to what you're actually doing. Be aware of this brain wandering. It's going to make it really difficult to do what you're trying to do and to respond to the questions that you're trying to respond to. And the second thing is just consciously try to slow down your speech. The fight or flight response and the adrenaline makes you want to go faster. That's natural. That's normal. But if I'm trying to tell people about the amazing coaching and training that we're going to do for their employees, they do not want to hear that on times 1.75 speed. They want to hear it at 1. They want to hear it at a speed where they can listen and where they can take it in and where I sound grounded and calm. Now, I may not be calm, but just intentionally focusing on slowing my speech down does have a calming effect on my physiology. And it helps people to actually get what I'm on about. Rather than just being like, blah, 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 and like babbling. The other thing that you can do is to try and smile. Tells your body that you're in a safe state and maybe it can relax a tiny little bit. So that's during. Narrow your focus, slow your speech, and maybe try and smile. And after. So you may think that I said I was going to talk to you about this in terms of before, during, and after. And you may think that after is not that important because it's like, well, oh, phew, thank God, it's over. After, who cares? I'll be like going out for 3 large glasses of wine or whatever. But this step is very, 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 very crucial. Do not skip it. I want you to talk to yourself again. So remember at the beginning, I talked to myself and I was like, I don't care what happens. I don't care if you fall on your face. I will support you. I will be proud of you no matter what happens. Right? Time to cash in on my promise. I said I would do that. Now I have to keep my word. So at the end, I'm like, I'm proud of you, Anna. Proud of you. You did that. Amazing. I'm proud of you. Well done. Well done. Whether you just do that to yourself in your head or in a quiet moment, or just whisper it to yourself when you go to the toilet, whatever, or as you're walking along. What not to do now is to ruminate and beat yourself up about anything that you couldn't answer in the moment, anything that went wrong, anything that didn't go as quite as you planned. Now, people think that it's helping to be awful to themselves afterwards because they have to beat themselves up in order to learn. But there is not a cat in hell's chance you are going to learn from being beaten up. Physically or mentally, probably. But in this case, mentally. This isn't just good for you, your recovery after you've been exposed to this thing that made you nervous. It's also it almost keeps it in your subconscious brain for the next time around. So imagine you beat yourself up horribly for a question that you didn't answer very well. Like in that tender meeting, for instance, there was something that I thought afterwards, oh, I definitely could have said that. Or I could have just asked a clarifying question instead of giving an answer to a question that I wasn't that sure about. However, I'm not going to beat myself up for that. I'm going to chalk that up to experience and I'm going to think, oh, maybe I could do that next time. But what's really important is this. Next time, if you beat yourself up, you will remember. Even if it's subconsciously, you will remember that you were beaten up for doing something wrong. And guess what that will do next time you go to do something similar? That's right, my friend. It will make you more nervous because you have inadvertently raised the stakes and the pressure on yourself. You may not think you remember, but let me tell you, you will remember. Imagine if you had a boss that was like, oh my God, you could have answered that better. Jesus, what were you thinking? That would be awful. But guess what? Next time you go out and do the same thing again, you're really going to remember that. And it's going to make things harder. So do not skip the step after. Do not beat yourself up. Cash in your prize. Be proud of yourself. Because I promise you, it's the most effective way of doing things. And it really will help you to handle yourself when you're feeling nervous next time round. All right, that is all I have for you today, except to invite you again. If you haven't already attended one of the Grow Your Professional Confidence classes, they're great. Come and join us for the June 29th, 2023 class. And if you're listening in the future, just click on the link anyway and look in the link tree. And there's probably something cool going on that you can get involved with right now. All right. I'll see you next week. Bye.